Hello and welcome to this new C programming tutorial. This is part 4 on how to program in C. In the previous tutorial we learned how to call simple method, we learned how to use some new floating point variables, and we learned how to use if and else statement to do control flow operations. So what else is to be learned in C? Well, C is a kind of elegant and simple language, but still very, very powerful. Okay? So in C, we can also pass parameters to methods. Okay? So how do we pass parameters to a method? Pretty simple. Okay. Imagine I want to create a method that adds two numbers. Okay? So for simplistic reasons, let me delete all of these. Let me delete these two. Okay. And I want to create a method that will add two numbers. Okay. So to do that, I will say void, or maybe int in this case. So if I say int, this means this will return an integer. Don't forget to return 0 on the main method. Okay. So here, if we say int add numbers, okay, we open parentheses and here we define the parameters. For example, the first will be int n1, comma, int n2. So we're defining two parameters that we will add. So to return the added numbers, we're going to say return n1 plus n2. Okay? So how do we call that method? So what do we call it? Here we're gonna say create an int variable, and we will say sum. For example, int sum will be to add two numbers. The first number will be 10, and the second number will be 15, for example. So we are calling the add method, and when we call the add method, we have to provide these two parameters. The two of them are numbers. So what the call method will do is we'll get the 10 and add with 15, and we'll send that result back. So return means send that result back as an integer. Okay? And I'm storing this integer in sum. So let's print the value of sum by saying printf the sum is, okay, and I will say sum. Okay, so let's compile and run. So we have something right here. Oh, it's not add, it's add numbers. Sorry, the method name is not add, it's add numbers. Okay, so we will run it again. So we have here, oops, I forgot to tell this is an integer. So %d new line, oops. So %b and new line. So now it should work. Okay, we compile it, we run it, and as you can see, it says the sum is 25. So I can change these numbers pretty easily right here. For example, 100, and I run it again, and the sum is 115, which is way easier. So the sum is kind of a easy to do thing. But what if I want to get the average of two numbers? Okay, so we will create another method that we will call it int get average. Okay, and we will pass it again n1 and int n2. These names can be any name you want. And what we want to return right here will be between parentheses, we will first add two numbers and divide by 2. So it will be n1 plus n2, and all these parentheses will be divided by 2. Okay? So we will return the average. So the sum of these numbers is 115. And we want to print also the average. So we're going to say the average is, okay? And we will print %d, a new line, and we will print get average. So we don't really have to store this in a variable. We can also print it directly. So we will print get average, again 115. Okay. And if we go ahead and run this, we can say that the average is 57. Okay, awesome. So this is how we call a method in C. We are passing parameters, and the method is somehow using those parameters to check what the user wants. Okay. So what if we want to do something even more exciting, like checking if a number is prime? So to check if a number is prime, we want to return only yes or no, like is prime or not. We don't want to return a specific number. So we don't have Boolean exactly in C, but to use Boolean, we define it as a char or char. So go ahead and say char is prime, and we will pass an integer, for example, n. Okay, and these will return either 1 if it is prime or 0 if it is not prime. Okay, so what is a prime number? Well, a prime number is a number that can only be divisible by itself. Okay, you may know this, you may not know this, but for example, the number 5 is prime because it can only be divisible by 5. Number 6 is not prime because it can be divisible by 2, by 3, and by 6. You know, the 6 is not divisible. So we want to know if a number is prime. To check if a number is prime, we will have to create a for loop. So you're going to say for int I equals 1. Okay, I less than n, I plus plus. We open this, and what we're saying here, not very efficient, but what we're saying here is that we will initialize the first number to 1. Why we don't initialize it to 0? Because we cannot divide by 0. And actually dividing by 1 is not worth it, so we can initialize it to 2. Okay? And then we will increase the number while I is less than n. So for example, it will say if, how to check if a number is prime? Well, if it's divisible by the number. In other words, if it has no remainder, right? So you're going to say if n modulus I equals 0, we will return 0 because it won't be prime, and we don't have to check up to n. We can also check to n divided by 2 to make this even faster. Okay, so if n modulus I returns 0, then it is not prime, so we return 0. And if the for loop ends without returning 0, it means the number is actually prime. So we will return 1. Okay, pretty elegant for me. This looks pretty elegant, this method. Okay, now we will check if a number is prime or not. So you're gonna say print f so we're gonna say if is prime, we will say the number is prime. If it's not, we would say the number is not prime. Okay, so we're gonna say here, we're gonna say if is prime, and we'll pass, for example, the number 7. Okay, else. Okay, so if 7 is prime, we're gonna print it is prime. Okay, and if it's not prime, we're gonna print f. Oh, let me print a new line here. So always print a new line to make it look nicer. Okay, so printf, it won't be prime, so it is not prime. Okay, now if I run this program, I'll say that it is prime. So the 7 is prime. But what if I put 9? It will say it is not prime because, well, 9, it's not prime. So maybe I want to know if the number 1000 is prime. And it's not prime. And what about 1001? It is not prime. What about 101? It is prime. Okay? So this is how we pass a parameter to a method. We are passing the number 101 as parameter. We can hard code it, but we can also pass it as a variable. Like, for example, int number to be checked, and it will say 101. And instead of passing 101, I will pass the number to be checked. We can pass one parameter, 2, or more, okay? Okay, so that's how we use parameters passing in C. Okay, we also know how to make if and else statements that enables us to do control flow of the logic of our program. Okay, which is great. So we have learned the while loop, we have learned the for loop, which are also very, very useful on its own. Okay, so what else can we do in C? Well, we can do lots of stuff in C. There is the go to statement, but it's not really encouraged to do. What the go to statement says, well, basically is a jump instruction. For example, it's not really encouraged because it's hard to debug and hard to know. So I'm going to say, if it's not prime, I will go to loop. And the loop can maybe right here, for example. Loop, and this will go and if it's not prime, it will keep looping. Okay, for example, I will put a non-prime number, which 100, and as you can see, it says it's not prime, and it enters in an infinite loop. Now if you enter in an infinite loop and you don't know how to exit, the way to exit is pressing Ctrl C, and the program will exit. Oops, clear. Okay, so that's the go to statement. When the language was designed, it was kind of useful because it mimics an assembly language function that is called jump. But now we don't really use that very much as programmers. So now let's learn a bit about how can we call and how can we modify variables in C, but in a different way. So what's special about C is that you can use arrays. So what's an array? Well, an array is a pointer to a place in memory. So let's delete this method right here to continue with arrays. Okay, let's delete all of this. So what's an array? And how do we define an array? Well, an array is a data type that enables us to store multiple variables of the same type. For example, I want to store 10 integers in the same data structure. To do that, I would say int maybe dates. I want to install dates or ages or grades or whatever. So, and I put these kind of square brackets, and here inside this I will specify the size of the array, for example 100. What this is telling the compiler is I want 100 integers. Imagine defining 100 integers. You won't do that, but you can create an array of them. Okay, so if we want to access and modify an array, a cell in this array, it will do something like grades at 0. So we start counting from 0 in programming, and we will set this to 12. Okay, and now if I want to print the value, I say printf %d new line, new line. I want to print grades at 0. Okay, so we want to print the 0 cell of the grade, which we set previously to 12. Okay, so let's print it. So we compile it and we run it and we print the 12th number. Okay, so this is a sort of an array that hasn't been initialized. We can also create a pre-initialized array. So how can we do that? Well, we can do int grades2, for example, and this will be an array, and we will initialize this array to 1, 2, for example, 1, 2, and 3. So to better visualize how array works, I will print f double quotes %d new line, and I will print grades 2 at 0, which means give me the 0th element of grades 2, which in this case is 1. So we start counting. This is 0, this is 1, this is 2. So if I ask for the 0th element, I get 1. And if I ask for the 1th element, I'll get the 2nd element, so in this case 2. Okay? So this is how we can do this, by either declaring as how many items we want or actually declaring the actual items we want. Okay? Very, very useful to do this. So that's what arrays work. We can create arrays of characters, we can create arrays of integers and all of that. Now, what if we want to create a string? So in C we don't have strings, but we can create them in the following way. We can go and say a char pointer, and we will call this string. And we said equal double quote, hello, I am a string. Okay? So how this works, how this even works? Well, we still don't learn pointers. We will learn pointers in the next tutorial. But how this works? Well, basically, this data type points to a place in memory that contains a char. So this points to the first element of the array. So this is an array of characters. Okay? As you can see, if I hover the mouse on here, we can see that it's char array of 20 characters. So this is an array of characters, and this points to the first element, which is this one. Okay? Now, if I want to print a string of characters, I'll do, and instead of %d, I'll do %s, which means print a string. And then I will print also a new line, and I will print the string. Okay. And if I print it, it says, hello, I am a string. So this doesn't have to be called string. This can be called sentence or whatever name you want to give it. So sentence, it still will work. Okay. So that's how we print a string. And now, what if I want to explain to you a bit about pointers, kind of an introduction. So this is pointing to the first one. So this means I can actually change the place where it points. If I want it to point to the second one, how can I do it? Well, very simple. I just say sentence plus plus. It will increment the pointer not to H but to E. Okay? One place. And let's do it again. And as you can see, it says, hello, I am a string. So this gives you an idea of how this works internally. Okay? But if I want to print the whole thing, of course, I delete that and I just print it. So this is the beauty of C, that you can control even that. So you can control very, very low level stuff right here. Okay? Awesome. So now, what do I have to do if I want to maybe get input from the user? Okay? So how do I get input from the user? Well, let's do it. What I will do is this stdio also enables us to get input. What we will use to get input will be the following. Will be get char enables us just to get a character from the user. Okay? So for example, we're gonna say char c equals get char, and then if we want to print this, we can say print f %c new line, and we want to print the c character. If we run this, it says nothing because it's waiting for us to put a character. If I press A, for example, enter, then as you can see, it prints the A character. Okay? So that's how we get one single character. Okay? Now, we can also get more than one single character. For example, there is a method that's called get string. No, it's called get I don't remember exactly. Get fs. So let me check inside this. So if you click on control and then you go and click here in standard IO, then inside here you cannot actually see the definitions and how it works. So fget_s, so that's the one I'm searching for. So the one I'm searching for is fget_s, which means get a string. As you can see here, it asks me for some parameters. Okay? The first one being a character pointer. So I will create a character pointer, for example, say char pointer and get something. For example, or also an array, which is kind of a pointer too. So maybe sentence, and I will make these 10 characters long. Okay, so the first thing I will pass here will be sentence. The second thing I will pass will be how many characters I want. In this case, 10, for example. And the third will be from where I want it. I want it from the keyboard. So that's the standard input, the keyboard. So say std in. Okay. So after I do this, I will be printing the sentence. So print double quotes %s new line sentence. Okay, so now let's run it, and as you can see, I will say hello there, and as you can see, what happened right here, it prints H then hello there. Why it happened? Okay, so we'll say maybe it's these and right here, so let's run it again. Hello there. But it's not that. So why is this happening, you would say? And we have to learn about null terminators. So if you check how many letters this has, then hello there has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the space is also 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's why it doesn't have enough space to print, maybe. So we can say 20, and we'll also get 20. Okay. So hello, oops, there. And still it's not working. So what's going on here? Okay, the problem here is that the last character that we have here, it's being the character of the new line, because on the keyboard what we're doing is pressing hello, enter, and then we're pressing enter. When we press enter, we are pressing the new line character. Okay, so we have to do it. And apart from that, we're also getting these characters, so we don't need this. This is just confusing us, so we'll delete this. And now if we run this, we say hello there, and now it works. But there's something here we should also learn. If you remember, a sentence or a character or a string is an array of characters. So, but not just that. A string is an array of characters that end with a null terminator. So what's a null terminator? Well, we'll define it right here. So it's a character, so we'll call it null terminator. And this is defined as single quote backslash, single quote backslash 0. This is a null terminator. I will introduce you how this works. So this tells the system where a sentence ends. Okay? So if I go ahead and run the program and say hello there, it prints hello there. But what if I put the null terminator before the sentence ends? For example, I want to put it in the following size. So we can say sentence at 7 will be equal to null terminator. So what I am telling the system here? Well, I am telling to put a null to replace the character at position 7 with a null terminator, which means that the system will think the string ends on character 7. Okay? So we will do that, and we will print the sentence again to check what happens. So %s sentence, and say hello there, and as you can see, it prints hello T. Why? Because the H is the 7th character. So if you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so it's actually, you don't count like that. You count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And H is 7, but we have replaced the 7th with a null terminator. That's why it only prints up to hello T. Okay? And why it doesn't print a new line? Well, because the previous thing ends with a new line. Why? Because we pressed enter, And when we press enter, we'll also entering a new line, which is saved on the array. Okay? So keep this in mind and keep practicing and experimenting with these things. Once you can work, you feel comfortable with these, then everything else is really easy. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I see you in the next one. Bye.